Navigating Uncertainty, the Humanitarian Sector under the Trump Administration. Introduction. Donald Trump served as U.S. President from 2017 to 2021. His America First policy emphasized prioritizing U.S. interests over global commitments. Objective: explore the impact of his administration's decisions on the humanitarian sector. Highlight key areas affected, including funding, policies, and global collaboration. Reduction in humanitarian aid funding. Cuts to U.S. foreign aid budgets. Significant reductions in funding for countries in crisis, including Yemen, Syria, and Palestine. $200 million cut in aid to Palestinian programs, including UNRWA. Increased funding restrictions. New restrictions, such as the 15% indirect cost cap, limited flexibility for implementing agencies. Implications: delayed or canceled humanitarian programs. Greater reliance on alternative donors, such as the European Union. Strain on local and international NGOs. Withdrawal from multilateral agreements. Key decisions: withdrawal from the World Health Organization, WHO, in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Reduced contributions to UN agencies, including the UN Refugee Agency and UNRWA. U.S. exit from the Paris Climate Accord in 2017. Weakened global humanitarian coordination. Reduced funding for climate-related displacement and disaster response. Increased pressure on multilateral organizations to find alternative funding sources. Politicization of aid. America First approach. Humanitarian aid became a tool to advance U.S. foreign policy objectives. Aid was tied to political conditions, such as alignment with U.S. priorities. Reductions in aid to countries that opposed U.S. policies. Increased aid to strategic allies in the Middle East. Reduced impartiality in humanitarian efforts. Increased challenges for agencies maintaining neutrality. Impact on refugees and migration. Reduction in refugee admissions. Refugee admission cap reduced from 110,000 in 2017 to 15,000 in 2021. Historic low for U.S. refugee resettlement. Restrictive migration policies. Implementation of the Muslim ban, restricting entry from several predominantly Muslim countries. Stricter asylum policies, making it harder for displaced populations to seek refuge in the U.S. Implications: increased burden on host countries in regions like the Middle East and Africa. Strain on humanitarian agencies responding to refugee crises. Increased focus on religious organizations. Shift in funding priorities. Greater support for faith-based humanitarian organizations, particularly Christian groups. Reduced funding for secular and non-Christian organizations. Implications: questions about neutrality and inclusivity in aid distribution. Potential alienation of vulnerable populations in diverse communities. Uncertainty and delayed funding. Unpredictable funding cycles. Frequent budget delays and reallocation of funds created uncertainty. Agencies struggled to plan long-term programs. Delays in humanitarian response. Critical programs faced interruptions or reductions in scale. Example: delayed food aid shipments to crisis-affected regions. Global ripple effects. Scaling down critical programs. Reduced availability of food aid, health services, and shelter in conflict zones. Examples: Yemen, Syria, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Increased reliance on alternative donors. European Union and private sector donors stepped in to fill gaps. Local NGOs took on a greater role in implementation. Fragmented humanitarian response efforts. Increased operational challenges for smaller NGOs. Positive aspects limit. Targeted funding for specific crises. Some funding directed toward combating ISIS and assisting displaced populations in the Middle East. Increased role of alternative donors. Reduced U.S. funding led to stronger involvement by other countries and organizations. Advancement of localization. Local organizations gained greater prominence as global funding dynamics shifted. Lessons learned. Diversify funding sources. Reduce reliance on single donors to avoid disruptions. Strengthen localization. Empower local organizations to take on leadership roles in humanitarian response. Advocate for depoliticized aid. Maintain neutrality to ensure equitable aid distribution. Enhance multilateral coordination. Strengthen partnerships between governments, NGOs, and multilateral agencies to reduce reliance on any single donor nation. Conclusion. Trump's policies disrupted the global humanitarian sector, particularly in funding and coordination. Politicization and funding cuts created significant challenges for aid delivery. Call to action. Learn from these challenges to build a more resilient and equitable humanitarian system. Advocate for global cooperation and neutral needs-based aid policies.
If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel.